Hello and welcome to our video tutorial for crafting your reading journals for your memoir book study for January of 2022. Let's take a look at what we're going to be working on. As you know, we have days to read and work on our reading journals, and that's pretty much every day of the week except for Thursdays. And our meetings will begin on Thursday, January 20th, so you actually have a nice chunk of time next week, January 10th through 14th, to read and work on your journals each day, as well as today, Friday, January 7th. And let me walk you through how you're going to create your journals, and I have your templates already created for you, and let me show you an example as well. So in our journals, we're going to be crafting a double entry journal. So that means on the left side, you're going to have a passage that you're going to analyze, and on the right side, you're going to be responding to that passage. So let's take a look at the guidelines, and then we'll look at the completed example. On the left column, we will choose a passage of substance and significance. We want to copy it exactly as it appears, and we want to include the name of the chapter and the page number of the passage. Passages of significance might include one or more of the following literary elements. It possibly could be theme or motif, and you should have a neon yellow handout from November with a list of possible themes. If you've misplaced that, let me know. You could talk about the character traits of the person in your book. Is that person determined? Is that person courageous? Is that person negative? Is that person pessimistic? Is that person kind? Okay. You can talk about positive and negative character traits that are important to what happens in their lives. You could discuss conflict. It could be external conflict where the person is having an issue or a challenge with another person, with society, against nature, or some other external force. Or it could be an internal conflict, a problem or a challenge that the person is struggling with inside his or her heart and mind. We could choose passages related to our unit essential questions, and I've included the copy of those in this slideshow, and we'll post them in Canvas each week since they're on the back of your reading schedule, and I don't want you to have to take that handout out of the sheet protector and constantly flip it. But you could choose passages related to that. You could choose passages related to figurative language, so things like similes and metaphors. Your passages might relate to the mood of the book or the tone, the speaker's attitude toward the subject. It could be imagery, or maybe the importance of setting, the time and place, and what's happening in the book. Let's take a look at how we're going to copy the passage into our journal. So whatever book that you are reading, all of our reading journals have this exact same format. Okay? You are going to write your passage that you're going to analyze in the left column, and it needs to be copied word for word. It also, as I noted earlier, needs to be one of importance and substance, because it's hard to have something to talk about with other people in the class when we start our discussions if you've picked a passage that's not meaningful or you didn't really copy enough of the passage to have something to talk about. So here's the passage that I've chosen to analyze. I stepped into the room, teeth clenched tight as my fist. Who was this stranger to say that I wouldn't make it? He didn't know me from spit. I gritted my way through his silly exams, stoking his words like kindling, hoping to God he'd choke on his ink blots in games of free association, all of which taught him zero about who I was or would be or could be. I am not who he thinks. I am me. So I've copied this. I've put quotation marks around it. I've put the page number 53, and this comes from the chapter called Statistics. So you're going to choose a passage. Okay? You're going to put it in the box. Now we're going to talk about writing your response. Let's look at the guidelines, and then we'll come back to the example. Now let's talk about how we're going to respond to the passage that we've selected. Once you've chosen your passage that you think is discussion worthy, then you're going to choose 2 of the unique response stems in your journal. We want to try to write complete sentences and be thorough and detailed, and we want to include the code. So you could talk about connections. You could talk about things you're wondering about. You can make predictions. You can do clarification and explanation and interpretation. You can do a response or an evaluation. You need to have 2 unique response stems. So in other words, you should not do 2 connections or 2 wonders. You want to mix them up. You are also welcome to have additional responses that relate to any ideas, thoughts, questions that you might have that you think are important to you as a reader or that you want to discuss with others. Again, let's look at a model example. Again, you have your response stems at the top of every journal so that you know where they're at. And then we're going to choose 2. Both of them are going to relate to the same passage. So here's the first response that I have. I chose to do some clarifying, and I've put the term and the code. Here's my thoughts. This quote or passage represents external conflict because Nikki Grimes is engaged in a tense evaluation with the school psychologist who's judging her because of the fact that she's in a foster home and has an alcoholic mother. This scene is an example of person versus person because Nikki Grimes is determined to show the psychologist that his snap judgment of her is wrong, and she is indeed smart and mentally healthy. So I'm explaining the external conflict here, and you notice that I've not written a whole bunch, but I've been very clear and detailed in my explanations. Okay, now here comes my second response, and for my next one I've chosen to do a wonder. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. This passage makes me wonder if Nikki will be judged incorrectly and labeled as mentally ill. It makes me wonder and worry if she might be separated from her lifeline of her sisters. They have endured so much abuse together, and it would break my heart if that happened, and or if this psychologist doesn't really understand or know all the terrible abuse, both verbal and physical, that Nikki has suffered. Yet she is a survivor. Will he know and appreciate that she is a survivor doing the best that she can as a child? So again, I've got my passage. I've copied it exactly as it appears. I've got the page and the chapter number. Again, my book, my memoir is Ordinary Hazards by Nikki Grimes. It's a wonderful book, by the way. Highly recommend it. I'm choosing a passage for this first journal that's going to cover pages 1 through 30. And I've done 2 unique responses with thought and purpose and detail. These are things that would all be discussion worthy with other people in the class if they're reading my book. Now, you can do a third response if you want, and this is kind of a wild card, if you will. Anything that you have a question about or that you think you would want to talk about with other people, this is where you put it, if you would like. So I noticed that there was a simile in my passage, and here's what I wanted to make note of because I want to talk about it with other people in the room. I noticed a simile stoking his words like kindling. This simile makes me think that Nikki is giving him crazy answers out of spite or anger to try to substantiate and fuel his prejudgment of her as a disturbed person. So in other words, it's kind of like she's needling him a little bit. If you stoke a fire, okay, you stoke it with kindling, you're trying to get the fire going. And she is so mad at him that she almost wants to give him some crazy answers just to make him think that she is and to kind of toy with him. So this is an example of a model journal. Again, you have to have at least 2 responses unique from the response stems. A third one is optional. Again, you want to be selective and you want to think about what you are reading, and we want to be intentional. Now, as we're reading, I'm not going to require you to take formal notes, but I am going to provide you sticky notes so that you can mark passages and remember ones that you might want to write about in your journal, because there's nothing worse than reading 25, 30 pages or a couple chapters and then you can't remember where the passage is that you want to talk about. So you will have an opportunity to come and choose from my little sticky note bar. Again, I'll provide Post-its, and how you choose to code them or what you want to write on them, I'm going to give you choice because I don't want you spending so much time taking notes on your Post-its that you're getting behind on your reading or your reading journals. But again, you can code them pretty easily, and if you even want to use the codes from the journal, then you could certainly do that. So I'll let you decide how you want to code and organize them. But again, you want to have some system of making notes so that when you go back to find your passages that are discussion worthy, then you can find them pretty easily in your book for your journal as well as talking within your group. So we want to make sure that we do that. And again, I will provide you Post-its because I have all kinds of sizes and shapes and styles for you to use. Again, we've looked at our example of the double entry journal. It's going to be online in Canvas each week, and I'm also going to give you a hard copy in class to have. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about suggested reading journal goals. So these will be posted around the classroom next week, but again, they'll also be in Canvas. For my first period, by the 20th, hopefully, you're going to have journals done through chapters 1 through 12. By the 27th, chapters 13 through 18. And by February 3rd, by chapters 14 through the epilogue. For this book and all the others, the first part might seem a little much, but we have the extra reading time, so that's why there's a little bit more to try to do by the first meeting on the 20th, so that you're not overwhelmed as you're coming down the home stretch. Okay. For my fourth period students, if you're doing someone like me, we're going to try and do journals 1 through 10 by January 20th, journals 11 through 18, by the 27th, and then the last section, journals 19 through 25, by February 3rd. And on your journals, it will give you the chapter numbers and or page numbers so you know what those journals correspond to. Okay. For Becoming Kareem in fourth period, by the 20th, journals 1 through 10, by the 27th, 11 through 21, and journals 22 through 29. And again, notice the journal numbers don't always correspond to the chapters. For many of the journals, I'm actually combining chapters, so you might be doing a journal over 2 or 3 chapters, because for these books, a lot of the chapters are pretty short. For Bad Boy, also fourth period, you guys will do journals 1 through 8, hopefully by the 20th, 9 through 15 by the 27th, and 16 through 20 by February 3rd. For my fifth period students, if you're doing Somewhere There Is Still a Sun, you're going to do journals 1 through 8 by the 20th, 9 through 13 by the 27th, and 14 through 18 by the 3rd. For my fifth period students doing March Forward Girl, journals 1 through 8 by the 20th, 9 through 16 by the 27th, and 17 through 21 by the 3rd. And again, for these books, a lot of times I'm combining chapters, so just pay attention to the journal number and where you need to be. For my sixth period students, for Farewell to Manzanar, our first journal will include the foreword and chronology through chapter 9. By our second meeting, our journal packet will be journals 10 through 17. And then by February 3rd, it will be journals in chapters 18 through 22 plus the epilogue. So that's a little bit of an overview of our work with our reading journals. I also want to encourage you to keep our essential questions in mind as we read, because these are all certainly discussion-worthy topics that we're going to come back and revisit, both in our face-to-face discussions as well as some of our warm-ups and exit slips. And again, these will be posted at the top of each weekly Canvas module, and they're also housed in the slideshow, which will be available for every week that we are in this unit. If you have questions or you're not sure what to do, please let me know. Again, I already have your journals assembled and available for you. And if you finish your first set of journals early, just come see me and I'll show you where to go in the room to get your next set. Please let me know if you have any questions or need help of any kind. Thank you for watching our video tutorial.